This is the Mercedes McLaren SLR 722 GT, one of only 21 that they made of the one make race series. This is the Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren 722, and this exact car was formerly owned by McLaren boss Ron Dennis. This is the Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren Stirling Moss, one of only 75 of the last edition they made, the open-top Barchetta. And this is the Mercedes-Benz SLR 722S, one of 150. We're here today in Denmark with the selected car collection. Now, I previously went to see some of the amazing cars in one of the other locations. Today, we are going to see a small snippet of some even more incredible cars that feature as part of the selected car group. Now, this is the most exclusive of exclusive venues. Unfortunately, I can't bring you behind closed doors. They host private events and all sorts of different meetings and facilities on site, but we are allowed to take a look today at some of these very special Mercedes McLaren cars, which many people often ask, why don't I have one in the Shmeemobiles? Well, we're going to go through these in detail and a lot more here today. But that is not all. Take a look at the cars that surround me in here that we can run through today. The likes of the Bugatti EB110 GT, a Porsche 964 3.8 RSR, the Lamborghini Reventon Coupe, a car I've actually seen before, another 722S as it happens behind the SLS Black Series, actually a 1983 Ferrari F1 car, a Dower EB110 Supersport, those are very interesting, Maserati MC12 Corsa, and take a look at what's here. Yes, McLaren F1. Can you believe it? I have actually filmed this very car before, about a decade ago in California during Car Week. It's one of very few F1s with the HDK package, but although it wasn't on camera, one of my favourite car moments of all time is that I was sitting in a traffic jam heading to an event behind this car and going the other way, believe it or not, you know what I'm going to say, another McLaren F1. I will never forget that vivid moment, and to see it again, very special. But it's because McLaren had made that their first road car that they then went on doing this project with Mercedes-Benz to make these, the SLRs, which is of course what we're here with the selected car collection to talk about today. Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel. Well, we've got a lot to go and see. Before we get out of the wind, because it is quite chilly here at the moment, and go and take a look at what you've just caught a glimpse of and the incredible cars inside, I want to talk about this lineup. It's not often that you see such amazing examples of these four special edition Mercedes-Benz SLR McLarens together, the collaboration between these two brands, and something that I'm often asked, would I be interested in an SLR, comes from the fact that I've owned and still own a number of Mercedes-Benz cars, and I've owned a number of McLarens and still have a 675 LT Spider as well. So what about this combination of these two great brands together, the design and style and elegance of Mercedes-Benz with the technology, lightweight racing experience that McLaren brought to the table as well. A car designed by Gordon Murray and the team, a car that uses lots of carbon fibre, a car that was really about performance but also grand touring, which is something obviously that I love a lot as well. And I have driven a regular SLR coupe. I also joined my friend Manny Koshbin to drive his SLR HDK, which was very much inspired by the GT, something you very rarely see. They did not make that many of them. And the HDK, like its predecessor, the SLR Edition, are special versions that have arrived since from MSO, McLaren Special Operations. Now in total, there are 2,157 SLRs, the total production run of all of the cars from 2003 through to 2010. Most of those, of course, are the original SLR coupes. It was followed up by the Roadster, but the first limited edition variant was this, the SLR 722, and that number, by the way, is very significant. If you're not familiar with it, it comes from Sir Stirling Moss racing in the Mille Miglia in 1955, setting the fastest time to ever be completed with the event last running in 1957, and 722 was his start number, or rather his start time, 7:22 AM, Stirling Moss, Dennis Jenkins, setting that record that was never ever beaten. A golden era of silver arrows for Mercedes-Benz and everything they were doing, and you see so much of that in this car now. Of course, it's powerful. You've got a 5.4 litre supercharged V8 we'll take a look at in a moment, but there are only 150 of these, and this particular car, like I said, is a bit different because it was owned by then McLaren boss Ron Dennis. Come and take a look here. at the way it's got this number plate built into the front bumper. It's behind a piece of clear glass or plexi, not entirely sure, with the plate actually on the car, and unusually it's also fitted with the regular turbine wheels. Those aren't the original 722 wheels, but those are the ones that were spec'd on this car from new. Now, if we come through, remember of course 722s have a number of upgrades in terms of sitting a little bit lower, having stiffer suspension, having a bit more power. The 722S came along. It's just called the 722S. Confusingly, it is not the 722 Roadster or even the 722S Roadster. It's just the 722S. Again, 150 cars, slightly different color on this, but you can see the wheels that were fitted to it more normally with the special editions. And again, bringing those elements of the coupe into the convertible. But I want to come all the way down because it was next that we get actually, and we're doing this slightly back to front, to the GT. Originally they were going to make 21 of these. I'm not actually sure if they made all 21. Even more power, 680 horsepower, and effectively a one-make series. The SLR Trophy, the idea was to get everybody racing these customer racing programs back in 2007 or so and have a whole load of fun with it, taking about 400 kilos of weight out of the standard car to make that. Big numbers, full race hypercar, track day hypercar. But the final and last, and this is really special, is the SLR Stirling Moss, named after Sir Stirling Moss himself. Only 75 of them, and get this, this is chassis number 1. Literally, it is chassis 1. In fact, I can come and show you that. If I pop open the doors, which are super cool themselves, come down here, look at this, chassis 0001. Literally the very first one. It's actually originally supplied to the, I think, Kuwait royal family, so it's the Crown edition with various Crown graphics and logos and golden plates around the car. It's pretty special, hey? It's pretty special, completely open. This really kick-started what we then saw with the Monza and the Elva and the V12 Speedster, but they did it first. They did it first, and they did it with style. Now there's a lot more I want to show you about each of these, but I think we should go inside for a minute first. Back inside, and we can start over here, the Bugatti EB110. This was Bugatti in the 90s, massively ahead of its time. Romano Artioli's era at the helm of the company in Campo Galliano in Italy, and a very different Bugatti to what had come before it. But this was a quad turbo, V12, extreme performance, very cool looking thing, and they were so underrated and misunderstood for such a long period of time. Only recently have they truly, I think, come into their own. Next to it, a very different car though, the Porsche 964 3.8 RSR. Now there are only 55 of these, effectively race car, but for the road. It's that iconic Porsche look of the 911 race cars, totally stripped out, bucket seats, mad machine, and just looks amazingly cool. This stands out to me, a personal reason. This Lamborghini Reventon, which is one of only 20 Reventon coupes, there were then the 15 Roadsters, is a car that I filmed about 11 or 12 years ago in Monte Carlo, in Monaco. I've seen this very car driving through town, effectively taking the Murcielago platform and introducing the spec of the LP670, although this was more the LP640, but prior to the SV actually arriving on the market, of which the Roadster actually had the SV's powertrain effectively. Very menacing looking thing, preempted the Aventador which came after. I've actually seen this car before as well, this 722S, one of the 150, separate car to the one that's outside, but this was actually at the Goodwood Festival of Speed 2 years ago in 2022. So nice to see that again also here at Selected Car Investment. This is quite a mixed bag of different machines right now. The SLS AMG Black Series, a car obviously very close to my heart, given I have one in my collection, and a car that I guess is the, let's say, updated version of the SLR, because Mercedes went to make this, or AMG made this, I should say, the regular SLS, as their first in-house product, and the Black Series was the ultimate version. They did make the final edition, which borrowed some parts from this, but the Black Series, there's no official confirmed number. We actually think now it's probably verging towards 500 cars in total. For a long time it was expected it was only 150, then it was 350, but it's actually quite a few more than that. Then we move to a Ferrari F1. This is a 126 C2 from 1983, Patrick Tambay car, which actually raced that year. He won that year at the Imola GP, the San Marino Grand Prix, but it wasn't this car that ran in that race. Regardless, pretty spectacular. This is a Dauer EB110 Supersport. So after the demise of Bugatti in the 90s, effectively Dauer in Germany bought all of the tooling, all of the spare parts, all of the equipment to go and make more cars. So there were around, I think, 5, 6, maybe a couple more of these that were actually made that followed on from the originals. Basically, a Bugatti EB110, but made by Dauer, different badge on it. And it's a really interesting story actually behind them. This is a Maserati MC12 Edizione Corsa. This was effectively the customer program for driving or buying the GT1 cars. After winning at their first outing at Le Mans, they made these, made a limited run of them. It's absolutely mad. I've been lucky to drive one before, and it is quite frankly just extreme to the most ridiculous degree. The sister car to the Enzo, dialed up to the max. I mean, just look at it. Look at the styling of this thing. Look at the shape. Look at the whole anger of it. And you could buy one of those and go and race it. But of course, this is here. This McLaren F1 HDK, Gordon Murray's designed, engineered, three-seater that went to Le Mans as well in the 90s. McLaren won in 1995. No one expected it with their road car that had effectively been made for the track, take it there and go and win at the race. And this wears the HDK, so it's not a GTR, it is a road-going F1. There are also the GTR race cars, many of which have been converted for the road, but this has the extra aerodynamic package, so the front splitter at the front and a wing at the back, derived from those of the race cars. But to come and squeeze through, and we have special permission to just have a look at this, I mean, just absolutely mega inside here. Totally, totally ridiculous. And obviously becoming worth the most immense amount of money. That central seating position, lightweight, BMW V12 engine back here, rear driven, just totally breathtaking. Being in the presence of this car is special. I mean, just standing here is special. And having seen it and filmed it in California, now to see it in Europe is kind of icing on the cake. But as I mentioned, McLaren had made this, their first road car. At the time, they actually struggled to sell them. They didn't sell anywhere nearly as many F1s as they wanted to. It was incredibly expensive. It was about £650,000 back in the 90s, which was vastly more than a Chiron now, relative to anything else on the market, for example. It was significantly higher levels of engineering in every possible way. And obviously they finished production in the mid-90s as well and had a period continuing on the Formula One circuit and numerous other different race series, but without a road-going offering, which is where the SLRs came along. Mercedes-Benz invested in McLaren and used McLaren's racing technologies and experiences to help develop the road car. So let's head back to the lineup to take a better look at them. Back over to the cars, because I need to show you a little bit more under the skin. We need to talk about how the front opens and the theatre of this thing. It's one entire carbon fibre front clamshell. Now this was Mr. Dennis's very own car. The doors are of course supercar doors that open upwards as they should. If I pull the lever just down here, I'm going to come and show you how exactly this works. The 722s had a little bit more power than the standard cars, but effectively you have a lever on both sides. You pull those to release it, then you lift it up and forwards in the first step of the motion. It's running on some wheels and tracks, come all the way around, and the entire thing pivots to the front and just looks insanely cool. Come in closer though and have a look at the power plant that we have here. The 5.4 litre supercharged V8, front mid mounted, it's entirely behind the front axle. In 722 form, 650 horsepower, up from 626 in the standard, and 820 newton meters of torque, up from 780. Those are pretty big numbers when you think about it, and it just looks immense. I mean, come in closer and you can see all of the use of carbon fibre that you have here, the whole front clam being carbon, but obviously lightweight, using Formula One style materials. It's also about the design, these fins that you have down the side, the way these look for the heat dissipation, the exhaust tailpipe sitting right down beneath them as well. I just found this thing infinitely cool when it was introduced, and I want to show you something back here as well. Of course, the plate, Ron Dennis, 2007, McLaren from McLaren Automotive, because this car still has its original cover. It actually also has a fire extinguisher built into the boot of it. But I want to show you this, which is clearly part of the original customer experience and the order kit and gifts that were given out with it. Inside here, have a look at this. Just some information about the car, letter from the then boss, very, very special. And then this, if I can just open it, I might need to just shake it out so I can show you this. Lift out this book. In here, this is actually numbered with the chassis number of the car, something that McLaren also did with the Senna. I love these kind of things. To still have this with the original car is super, super special, that stays with it. Anyway, let's put these away for safekeeping in the back of this. Actually, look even in here, you've still got carbon fibre for the wheel arch surrounds down there at the back, and quite a decent amount of luggage space in the coupes. In fact, the Roadsters only lose a tiny little bit in comparison, which makes it a very good touring car. It had active aero. This is an active wing on the back, the way that pops up depending on the speeds and what you're doing when you drive. Have a look inside as well. Comfortable, well equipped, without the modern type of cars being completely cluttered with screens and displays and too much going on, and just a really smart place. I mean, you've got storage bins back here. In fact, you can actually, if I just press here, open the upper storage bin, although I can't quite reach in, and the lower section as well, which is just kind of cool, kind of well designed, kind of innovative, all in this thing. Then to close this back down, let me do this as delicately as I can. This lowers. It has two wheels, one on each side, basically on a track, which makes it slot into place. You can kind of see in here how, well, on the other side, the wheel drops down onto that track, so it's safely in position. And then all you do is slide it back and basically drop it down into position. Done, just like that. It's a cool looking thing, this incredibly long bonnet. It's what I like about the AMG GTs and the SLSs before that as well. This was kind of the precursor to those. And this was Ron Dennis's very, very own car. 722 also with the carbon lip down at the bottom, a lowered set of suspension as I mentioned, different ride qualities, different configuration, different tuning. And yeah, that is one of only 150 to kick us off. A lot of people don't realise that the order of these cars is a little bit different. It went from the SLR Coupe to the 722, and then the Roadster came. So this certainly wasn't in the plans back when that had been launched. The 722S follows the same formula as I mentioned, exclusive darker paint colour that you can see instantly, and we've thankfully got the sun poking back through. But of course now, like with the regular Roadster, but without the Roadster in the name, the folding soft top that tucks away onto the rear deck, it does so very quickly, and then these additional inserts that you have on either side of it, which you effectively place over the top to improve the look and improve the aerodynamics. Inside, 722S badging as you would expect, and I suppose that leads us on to talking about the gearbox, the 5-speed auto. It looks very, very cool. When you flick this up and press the start button, obviously more theatre, more drama, more excitement, but it's a 5-speed auto, and it was something that always let the car down a little bit for me. It's rear driven, long wheelbase, a whole lot of fun of course, but just lacking something by missing a 6th gear, by not having a manual gearbox. This arrived at the time of the Enzo and the Carrera GT, and this has in some ways been lost in time. I mean, it's representative of a very significant part of Mercedes history. It's a tribute to the 1950s cars, the likes of the 1955 300 SLR Uhlenhaut, which now is the most valuable car in the world, as per the auction results when it sold for 135 million euros. And this has so many design features, elements and tributes to those cars as well. You know, back in 1954, 1955, etc. Mercedes were dominating in Formula One, at the Mille Miglia, in just about every type of motorsport. So talking motorsport, we're going this way. The SLR 722 GT, the one make race series version. Think of this like the FXX, you know, Ferrari's track day toy, except it was for a race series, the SLR Club, the SLR Trophy, to take the 21 of these cars and to allow people to go and drive them, to race with them. And in many ways familiar from GT1, GT2 type cars, you know, massive picnic table on the back. Let's just stick on the biggest carbon fiber wing we can. 398 kilos lighter than the standard car. Very much reminiscent of the standard car in terms of the engine, for example, just a few upgrades to boost the power from the 722's 650 horsepower to 680 and torque up from 820 newton meters to 830. But when you come and look a little bit more closely at the front, it's all of these extra openings, of course, the grills for all of the cooling, taking more carbon fiber. I actually love that it's got the wooden pieces underneath to help with the inevitable scraping that you have out on circuit. But full race car, not road homologated. I don't think anybody's ever taken one of these and made it a road car. That would be kind of cool though. Lanzante could probably do something about that. Come and take a look inside though, pop open the door. I mean, firstly, a mission to climb in over the roll cage and the carbon fibre pieces here to the fixed bucket seats. I actually don't think that would be very easy. Of course you can pop off the steering wheel, but you can see inside. It is full race car. Gone are all of the luxuries of the interior. I mean, still in some ways slightly more luxurious than your straight GT3 race car or something of that nature, but very much stripped out, very much for purpose, and very much an unusual, often misunderstood thing. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The fact they actually did these to race, sliding windows, the whole lot, and the fact that they're kind of lost and around the world in some form. The livery on this, by the way, is representative of the Croatian flag. This particular car was originally ordered by the CEO of Mercedes-Benz in Croatia at the time, hence the design on it, which I think looks quite cool. It kind of suits it, that bold, bright, leery, in-your-face racing livery on a very, very rare, very special car. The sun is out, which clearly brings us to this, the perfect weather to go take it for a drive. The SLR Stirling Moss, the boss of them all, the SLR Stirling Moss, one of only 75. I've always loved these things. They just look infinitely cool. At the time, you have to remember, this wasn't really the done thing. This was about the Mercedes history in a modern car, a final send-off for the SLR, a model that they hadn't really produced as many as they had originally intended to. It was going to be several multiples of the final production run. Now, in terms of powertrain, this is effectively the 722, the higher power output, the stiffer setup, but without all of the weight of 8 pillars and windshield, a fixed roof, even a folding retractable hardtop, completely open permanently to the elements with these tonneau covers. So you've got the two covers, one on each side, it is a two-seater, and this bridge in the centre, all of which can actually be stowed away in the back. You can take them with you. So unlike, say, the Bugattis or something where you need to leave, or even the Paganis, you leave your Targa top at home, those you can take with you if you need to leave it parked outside and it's going to rain somewhere. Now, this particular car, like I said, is car number 1. To open the front, you actually have to undo the various bolts to take off the front clam on this. It's not quite so simple, but I want to show you some of the details like this. The gold plaque on the side with the signature of Sir Stirling Moss. And if I pop open the doors, and I always love how those open up, come and have a look inside here, because down where you have the seat controls, you also have the crown badging. Now, there were the crown editions of other SLR models. This wasn't officially a crown edition, but it kind of is. Clearly, it was number 1. And I also quite like this, the carbon fibre, which you're going to see more of around the back for the inlays and trims. So let me come and show you, in fact, like right here, the active rear spoiler on this. And it's quite hard to do that, silver tinted carbon fibre, even nowadays when tinted carbon has become more of a popular thing. But in the back of this, if we open it up, it still has everything. I love this, the tonneau cover bags, the car covers. Even over here, have a look. We've got the original goggles that they provided for driver and passenger to drive in this car, supplied with it. Plus, look under here actually, we've got the exposed carbon fibre and the CFRP, lightweight materials, obviously to make this the ultimate driving experience. And it's so cool when you see somebody actually driving it, just the way the shape of it sits, the style, this low missile-like wedge, because the design to begin with from the very front, the way the nose of this thing is shaped. And there are some details you probably haven't noticed, like come in closely, take a look at this. It's only got an opening here on one side, not on the other, which is quite unusual. You don't really think about that type of thing with it. Again, they made a new wheel design for this. They made it all a little bit more unique, a little bit different. I just think it's so immensely well styled. They got it right when they were the first to do it in a modern era car. The stuff that's come since is just a little bit different. It's not quite the same. These are super rare and obviously now hold incredibly high values as a result, because it's the ultimate SLR and named after the late great Sir Stirling Moss, who is one of the best drivers of all time and until today still holds that record from Mille Miglia that will never ever be beaten. It does beg the question, doesn't it? I've just taken you for a bit of a tour of these, which wasn't planned earlier, and basically shared the knowledge that I have on them because I really quite like these cars. In fact, I remember driving Gumball the first time I ever did it, and one of the Team Habibi's cars was driving with an SLR, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, to do a trip like that. So what is it that puts me off? What is the reason that I haven't done it. And truthfully, I think the cars are quite misunderstood, even by myself. The gearbox, as I discussed earlier, but also the costs to maintain them. And that's been one of the biggest hindrances to the values of the regular cars, the regular SLRs over time, because they are extortionately expensive to service, to get parts if anything happens. If you need a new front clam, which hopefully you never would, I think it's like 100,000 euros for the carbon fiber front end. It's a big, big ticket item. And so many of the other parts of the car, because of the limited run nature, fall pretty much the same way. But you know how much I love my SLS and GT Black series. So it's something to watch for the future. It's something that maybe combines these two brands. I mean, to have a McLaren badge worn on the side of a Mercedes-Benz car, you've got to remember that's also before McLaren Automotive as we know it now launched. At the time they were McLaren Racing, obviously they had done the McLaren F1, but this was the next road car, and it was a very different team and department and company to what they are today. A completely different setup across the board, and this was really bringing the F1 technology, and Mercedes-Benz having purchased the 40% stake in the company in 2003 before this had actually been fully unveiled and introduced at the end of that year in November 2003, or I guess the regular SLR Coupe, and making it a car for the road. I think in the future it's one to watch. It feels a little bit like the XJ220 from 10-15 years before, that in many ways now they aren't fully understood, not as they should be anyway. So perhaps it's one I need to experience. I know I have a few friends who've owned them, Manny, Hoovy, a bunch of other guys who have driven them, shared videos with them. But this is the holy grail of SLRs. 722S, Stirling Moss #1, Ron Dennis's SLR 722 Coupe, and one of the 722 GTs. Although I believe that car could be available for an interested party as well as it happens. It's not a bad lineup, hey? Not a bad little place to be standing in front of these cars today. It is time to hear the startup from down here. Sounds incredible, doesn't it? So the 722S, the Stirling Moss as well. It's like a powerful grumble from these cars. The sound is immense that they make. But I think these are heading off for now. The SLR 722S, and then followed by the exceptionally cool SLR Stirling Moss. Wow, tremendous examples of these cars. Wow, I am a big fan of that car. It's got a lot of presence, doesn't it? The shape of the nose, the styling, the turbine and aviation inspired design elements. It's time then to hear the big one. Without restriction, that's what it sounds like. Proper grumble, what a beast. The challenge now of pulling away. Challenge of pulling away, not the easiest in something like that. It has to be said, that's pretty cool. As the GT arrives with the other cars. Goodness, that was quite the epic appearance and arrival in the collection. A unique thing about Denmark is the way that taxes work on cars, and therefore the leasing. So we're here at Selected Car Leasing, and you can see there are some supercars around. In fact, there's an Audi RS6 waiting just over there in the handover area. But even the likes of a Ferrari 296 GTS, as I have at home in here, we have a 997 Porsche 911 GT3, in fact a 992 GT3 as well, and even a Lamborghini Huracan STO just here, plus a lot of premium cars, because it makes sense to do it this way. If it's Audis, BMWs, Mercs, Porsches, that type of thing. There's an Urus just here, a Mustang Bullet as well, tucked in at the end. But I also want to show you what's upstairs. Some leasing, some investment. Come with me. Immediately greeting us is a Stratos, a new Stratos from MAT, Manifattura Automobili Torino. Those are quite unusual things, but there's a mix of different cars up here. For example, a Ferrari 348 tucked in just there. And from where I'm standing now, one of the cool things here is that you actually see these cars from the road, and I've driven past a couple of times and seen some of the cars, the likes right now of an Aventador Anniversario, the 50th anniversary coupe. They made 100 of those. That's really quite special. Absolutely epic to see that thing. I saw it from the highway and I was like, mind blown that was here. The Bugatti EB110 theme continues. That's an EB110 GT in the silver, and opposite it, also silver, is a 911R, the 991 generation, of which there are 991 cars. Very, very cool thing to drive. I can't really pick out everything, but we're going to go for a whistle-stop tour. So we've got a 991.2 Speedster, one of 1,948 cars. We've got the Rennsport 911 Carrera GTS, one of only 25 of those in total. I'm now standing between a Z4 GT3 race car, and opposite it, AMG GT Black Series, which of course we know and love on the channel. Around towards the end, we've got the Pagoda, we've got the Alpha SZ. If we keep looking around, there's an E-Type, 356. Some lovely cars on display in the showroom for leasing, for purchase. Maybe I'll explain a little bit more of that in a moment. Past a 997 GT2, because I want to show you what's lurking just around here. This is actually quite unusual. On the face of it, it's an ultraviolet GT3 RS, which was an available colour for one generation, the 991.1. This is a 991.2 generation, which means it was PTS, and quite unusual, and as a result, super rare. And that's the kind of thing I like to just sometimes nerd out on the details about, because it means it's more special than you might realise at first. Back here, and with some more research, we need an update on the Ferrari Formula One car. So when Tambay drove this on his second outing, he qualified in pole position, first place, ready for the race. But it was on outing 4, he did drive this at the San Marino Grand Prix. This is a Formula One Grand Prix winner from the race at Imola. In 1983, Ferrari actually won the Constructors' Championship with the 126 C2B, but Nelson Piquet with the Brabham won the Drivers' Championship regardless. That's a very special piece, and here is part of the selected car investment portfolio. Now, there are these different pillars as part of the group. The investment cars, some of which you see here. The F1 is actually part of the collection, which I've taken a little bit more of a look around. An incredibly exclusive venue, an amazing place for corporate activations and that kind of thing, and filled with hundreds of epic cars. And then some cars that are of course part of the leasing setup, as we've seen as well, which here in Denmark makes a lot more sense given the additional taxes on luxury cars. You're looking at 150% extra tax in addition to the 25% VAT and purchasing the car to begin with if it's an outright buy, where of course when you lease there are tax advantages, which makes it a very sensible approach even for the types of cars that you wouldn't normally expect it. And some of course of which are also for sale, for export, for different markets, whatever it might be. But being reunited today with a couple of cars that I've seen before in a different location is always spectacular. And to take a better look around the SLRs to see the very special different derivatives, the likes of the Stirling Moss that I've seen a number of times in the past, but the 722 from Ron Dennis, the 722S ×2, and also the 722 GT, because you don't really see these around very often. And that is an amazing SLR, I want to say, lineup collection. What a day it has been out here in Denmark. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to the Selected Car Group for the opportunity to come today, take a look around and share some of the cars with you. Hopefully we can see more of things like that in the future. So stay tuned for what happens down the line. That's it for now though. Thank you very much for watching. Again, I hope you've enjoyed the video and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!